Lest we forget, this was commonly said in the times where Colorado depended on mining. Countless accidents took the lives of miners who worked, but the miners are going to take a stand and strike. The Columbine mine, located in Lafayette, experienced a devastating massacre in 1927 that led to the death of 6 miners and the injury of many others. Although the Colorado government has tried to accept responsibility by creating the Columbine Mine Memorials in honor of the ones who lost their lives fighting for their rights, the scar will always remain because the government denied their citizens the right of the First Amendment, the right of speech and assembly, as well as used the miners as scapegoats for their crimes. The Rocky Mountain Fuel Company owned the mine. This gave the company the ownership of the town Serene, a place that had 2 public buildings, a school, and a post office. The rest were stores funded by the company. Because of the 2 public buildings, the striking miners demanded their way into the town.
Coal mining reached its peak during World War I, and after the war ended, the coal mine industry began a long decline. So in the 1920s, their wages were cut over and over and over. At the very same time that mines were becoming more mechanized and more efficient. So mines were able to produce more coal with fewer workers. So the workers were becoming de-skilled. They were becoming low-wage workers. And as mine owners competed more with each other, the only way they could be profitable was to cut their costs. And the only costs they could afford to cut were labor costs. So they were striking for higher wages, but they were also striking for the right to organize into labor unions.
The Industrial Workers of the World, or the IWW, organized the strike on November 21, 1927. The Colorado government had already encountered the IWW and was fed up with the union interfering with the mining industry. The IWW was renowned for its ability to create rights for certain areas of industry workers.
What's your name?
Sam Scarlett.
What's your religion?
The IWW.
That ain't no religion.
The only one I got.
What's your nationality?
None.
Well, what country are you a citizen of?
I am a citizen of industry.
Where is your home?
Cook County Jail.
Before that?
County Jail, Cleveland, Ohio.
And before that?
City Jail, Akron, Ohio.
Look, are you a citizen?
No, I'm an industrial worker of the world.
On November 16, 1927, the state police, in case of any disturbance, brought machine guns into the town of Serene without Governor Adams' knowledge.
But then Governor Billy Adams became nervous. What if another violent occurrence like the Ludlow Massacre came? So he sent up a contingent of the enforcement guard to the Columbine mine one weekend.
Josephine Roach was one of the rarest business executives in the 1920s because she was willing to fight for her miners' rights. She was inspired to take charge of the Columbine mine after the tragic massacre in Ludlow.
And Josephine also became quite interested in Colorado's most violent coal miners' strike. And the United Mine Workers of America were attempting to unionize the mines. It became violent, and the tent colony at Ludlow was burned with 11 children and 2 women who died. And Josephine's sympathies were with them.
So she owned half the company. Another person owned the other half. So far in the limited history that's been written about the strike, people have argued that because she didn't have control of the company, she really couldn't control what was going on at the Columbine. When the strike started on October 18th, 1927, most of the coal mines throughout the state were closed down. The miners chose to picket at the coal mines that remained open. That's where the strikers focused their efforts, was at the Columbine, because it was still, trying to run. My work shows that Josephine Roach could have done more to prevent the violence that day, but she didn't.
On November 21st, 1927, the miners began striking outside of the gates of the town Serene. The guards at the top of the tower told the miners to go away. However, they stood there and kept striking. That's when the Rangers were called in. The Rangers were dressed in civilian clothing but armed with tear gas grenades, rifles, pistols, and riot guns. The head of the Rangers, Louis Scher, shouted out to the strikers, "Who are your leaders?" "We're all leaders," came the reply. Scher announced the strikers would not be allowed into the town, and for a few moments they hesitated outside of the fence. There was a discussion with many of the strikers asserting the right to proceed. One of the state police taunted, "If you want to come in here, come ahead, but we will carry you out." When the strikers stood their ground, the massacre began. The strikers, armed with rocks and pocket knives, were being tear-gassed, shot, and beaten by the Rangers. A total of 6 men were killed and around 60 were injured. In the end, no one was sure who shot first. News of the massacre spread because of the local newspapers, such as the Denver Post, that wrote articles about the slain miners.
The coroner's report held that the miners were at fault because they had invaded private property, even after being told not to invade the property. So there was no further criminal investigation there.
In the town of Lafayette, a few different memorials were created to honor the ones who lost their lives. A few of them include the Miners Museum, the Columbine Mine Rest Stop, the mural on the side of the public library, and the grave in the Lafayette Cemetery. Each memorial brought the community closer together and created closure for the ones who were impacted by the tragic event. The different memorials give the history of the event and the people a place to pay their respects. The citizens of Colorado will never forget the struggle to earn rights and the hardships faced trying to make a stand.
The Columbine Massacre set into motion a series of events that had widespread influence on American history, especially American labor history. It forced Josephine Roach to take charge of the Rocky Mountain Fuel Company in a way that she hadn't done before. Miners' working conditions and how the laws that people in Colorado had passed to try to help miners were not being followed. The public sympathy turned toward the miners and away from the coal operators.
Ever since then, mining in Colorado has improved. This graph shows the total energy compared to the coal consumption in the United States. As you can see, coal has been used as a stable source of energy. Associations such as the Colorado Mining Association have been monitoring the mines in Colorado and making sure that they're following the rules for safety. The Colorado Mining Association was founded for two main purposes. The first was to be a spokesperson for the mining industry in Colorado. The second was to work with other states and national mining associations to expand. They set out to promote and develop general welfare of minimal resource and industry, as well as encourage health and safety. Not to mention movements such as the 8-hour movement that gave workers longer resting periods and shorter working periods. Mining has become a safer job with higher pay for those who continue to work in this industry. In the present day, Columbine has become a landfill. The massacre has been somewhat forgotten over the years, but certain texts are keeping it alive. These texts include Stories from the Colorado Coal Mine, The Rocky Road to Justice, Columbine Mine Massacre, and Slaughter in the Serene, The Columbine Coal Strike Reader. The citizens are also protecting the tombstones of the miners. The mayor spent around $6,000 in order to repair any damage done to the tombstones.
We took on this project to restore 18 headstones here in the cemetery with the help of a grant from the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and the Historic Preservation Board teamed up to do this project. And so we looked at and prioritized and found that there were 18 that we could do for the amount of money, the budget that we had, the $6,000 budget that we had.